Have you ever noticed that the wealthiest people you know never actually talk about money? They don't brag about their salary. They don't discuss their investments at dinner. They deflect the question when you ask what something cost. For years, people assumed this was modesty, or privacy, or just good manners. But psychology tells a completely different story. The silence of the wealthy isn't accidental. It's strategic. And once you understand why, you'll realize it's one of the most powerful financial tools that nobody ever teaches you. In the 1990s, researchers began studying a phenomenon they called money talk, the way different socioeconomic groups discuss, or don't discuss, their finances. What they found was striking. Lower and middle-income families talked about money constantly. How much things cost. Who earned what they couldn't afford. Money was a daily, visible, emotional topic. Wealthy families, on the other hand, treated money like a private operating system, something that runs in the background, something you don't narrate out loud. At first glance, this looks like a cultural difference, a social habit. Nothing more. But dig deeper, and you realize it's something far more deliberate. Psychologists who study wealthy families have identified what they call financial discretion, a learned behavior where high net worth individuals consciously avoid discussing the specifics of their wealth, income, or financial decisions. And the reasons behind it reveal something profound about the relationship between language, psychology, and money. Here's something most people don't realize about the human brain. When you verbalize a goal or a financial achievement, your brain registers it as already accomplished. This is called social reality, and it was documented in a series of studies by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer at New York University. When you tell someone about your financial goal, I'm saving to invest, I'm paying off my debt, I'm building wealth, your brain receives a small but real neurological reward, a hit of satisfaction, a feeling of progress. The problem? You haven't actually made any progress. You've just talked about it. And here's the dangerous part. That neurological reward actually reduces your motivation to follow through, because your brain has already experienced the feeling of success without doing the work. Wealthy people, whether they understand the neuroscience or not, have learned this intuitively. They don't announce their financial moves. They execute them quietly, and they collect the real reward, not the verbal one. But that's only part of the story. There's a second reason wealthy people stay silent about money, and it's darker than most people expect. When you reveal your financial position to others, you hand them information. And information, in social and professional settings, is power. Think about what happens when someone knows your salary. They know your leverage in a negotiation. They know your desperation level. They know whether you can afford to walk away from a deal or whether you need it. Think about what happens when people know you're struggling financially. The way they treat you shifts. The opportunities they offer you change. The risks they're willing to take with you decrease. Wealthy individuals have learned, often through hard experience, that financial transparency is a vulnerability. This doesn't mean deception. It means discretion. It means understanding that your financial information is an asset. And like any asset, giving it away freely reduces its value. There's a reason that the most successful negotiators, investors, and entrepreneurs share a common trait. They reveal as little as possible about their financial position until they absolutely have to. And while the rest of the world performs wealth on social media, posting purchases, announcing salaries, signaling status through consumption, the genuinely wealthy are doing the opposite. They're invisible, and invisibility, it turns out, is a financial superpower. But there's a third dimension to financial silence that goes even deeper. For people who grew up without money, financial struggle becomes part of identity. It becomes a story they tell themselves and others. I can't afford that. Money is always tight. I'm not the kind of person who has savings. These statements feel like honesty, like self-awareness. But what they actually do is reinforce neural pathways that make the financial situation harder to escape. Every time you narrate your financial struggle out loud, you strengthen the identity of someone who struggles financially. Wealthy people, or people who successfully build wealth from nothing, share a fascinating behavioral pattern. They stop narrating their limitations, not because they ignore reality, but because they understand that the story you tell about yourself becomes the operating system your decisions run on. This is not positive thinking. This is not manifestation. This is basic cognitive behavioral science. The language you use about yourself and your finances shapes the mental models you use to make decisions, and those mental models determine your outcomes. The silence of the wealthy isn't just strategy, it's identity architecture, a deliberate choice about which story gets oxygen and which one gets starved. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do you adopt financial silence as a tool, starting today? The first shift is the hardest. Stop performing your financial journey for others. This means no more posting about your new purchase to signal success. No more venting about money stress to coworkers. No more announcing your financial goals before you've achieved them. Not because you should be ashamed, but because every time you perform your financial life for an audience, you're burning the psychological fuel you need to actually change it. The second shift is about the questions you answer. When someone asks what you paid for something, you don't have to answer. "I got a good deal" is a complete sentence. When someone asks about your salary, "I'm comfortable" is enough. When someone asks about your financial situation, "Things are moving in the right direction" closes the conversation without revealing anything. These aren't lies. They're boundaries, and wealthy people maintain them instinctively. The third shift is internal. Start monitoring the financial narrative in your own head. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "I could never afford that," or "people like me don't invest," pause. Not to replace it with false optimism, but to ask, is this actually true? Or is this just a story I inherited? Because here's the thing about inherited stories. They feel like facts. They feel like reality. But they're just old programming running on autopilot. And autopilot can be overridden. Rich people don't talk about money because silence is a tool. It protects their leverage. It keeps their goals intact. It starves the narratives that would hold them back. And the most powerful thing you can do with this information isn't to start hiding your finances from the world. It's to start paying attention to the stories you tell about money, out loud and in your own head. Because the conversation you're having with yourself about wealth is the one that matters most. If this made you think differently about money, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe. Because next week, we're going even deeper into the psychology that separates the wealthy from everyone else.